when you're ready. Okay, welcome everyone. I, Council President Walsh, call the June 3rd City Council meeting to order. Mayor Pauly has an excused absence tonight, so I will be serving as Mayor Pro Tem, and Councilmember Ray is also excused. As a reminder, we continue to have remote aspect to all of our meetings, so we can bring all kinds of people in, including staff and member of the public. And the first item on the agenda tonight is going to be Pledge of Allegiance. So I welcome you to stand. Join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, tonight we have a few items of special business and proclamations, which is why we have so many lovely people in the audience. So we'll start with those, then we've got a public comment period and the rest of our meeting. So I am going to start down there for the first one and welcome Roger Enders, our jail manager. Excellent. So it is not often we have someone who has served as long as Roger has. And, you know, I might say jail manager and you say, what? The city of Issaquah has a jail? Yes, we do. And we are that non-dramatic that we just do it. And part of the reason for that is because Roger has run it and has been there since the beginning. So Roger started with Issaquah 32 and a half years ago and was telling stories about how the jail used to be here before it moved over. Right now it's in the basement of City Hall and the police station across the street, 72 beds in case anybody's wondering. And I think it's really important just to recognize the people that have been with us from the start, that have made this a possibility to keep this essential community service in our community. You know, we have people in our jail who are served by our municipal court from Snoqualmie and North Bend and all other cities in the area, and they have to travel to get there. And we are lucky enough to have a great set of staff for our jail. That means that our community members, if they do need that as a service, are able to do it here. I don't know if anybody else has gone to any of the other jails, but it's quite a different experience in the Issaquah jail compared to some of the others. It's a much quieter, calmer experience. And I think, you know, we have a lot to credit to that. So I think the fact that you've been with us for this long, I just want to take a moment to appreciate that, to recognize all of the oversight, the employee growth, the procedures that you've grown in there, and then also all of the evidence and property room. A lot of other things in our jail and our police department that just aren't seen by the regular public, and they just continue to flow so well. So we want to thank you for the many years of service. So we have a plaque for you because we appreciate that. Do you want to say a few words before we take a picture?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Hello, everybody. I consider myself very fortunate to have worked for the city of Issaquah for the better part of my life. And just young, blessed, and fortunate to work with such great people with the Issaquah Police Department and the rest of the city staff. And I want to thank the city council and especially the citizens for being so supportive of the police department and jail and their ongoing support throughout.
Okay, next is Councilmember Tolmarts is going to be presenting ID 1697, the Cougar Mountain Zoo Week Proclamation. So now you've discovered we have a jail, we also have a zoo, and the zoo has brought in a lovely friend for all of us.
So we have Jared Munzer, Director of the Cougar Mountain Zoo, and Sam Dry, Mammal Keeper. And who's the third member of your team? Can you want to come to a mic? Oh, I'm sorry, I have to turn the mic on. all good. Now you're good.
This is Fern, a 1-year-old prehensile porcupine. She is one of the newest animal ambassadors that takes part in our education programs that we have at the zoo. And Sam not only is our mammal keeper, she's our designated pincushion.
Well, whereas the Cougar Mountain Zoo is an 11-acre zoological park located in Issaquah, which receives the majority of its funding through grassroots efforts of the Zoological Society of Washington, and the Zoological Society of Washington and the Cougar Mountain Zoo are dedicated to increasing the understanding and appreciation of the Earth's wildlife and the role of humanity in nature through education, exhibition, conservation, captive breeding, and recreation. And whereas the Cougar Mountain Zoo has served as a living classroom for 50 years, making educational programs available to over 10,000 school children. And whereas the Cougar Mountain Zoo has the largest, most unique holiday pageant in the Northwest, Santa's Reindeer Farm attracts more than 15,000 visitors to Issaquah during the month of December. And whereas the Cougar Mountain Zoo is the single largest non-competitive tourist attraction on the east side, attracting over 100,000 visitors to Issaquah each year. Now, therefore, the city of Issaquah does hereby proclaim the week of June 2nd to the 8th to be Cougar Mountain Zoo Week in the city of Issaquah, and we invite all community members and businesses to support the zoo and recognize the impact of the zoological park, the impact the zoological park has made on our community. Wherefore, the mayor set her hand and seal of the city of Issaquah on this 3rd day of June 2024. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not so much.
Well, last year, when that happened and we all clapped, it was a bird.
It was a hawk,
that,
yes.
Yeah, almost flew away. Jared, do you want to say any words?
I would just like to thank the council and the city and all the city staff for the support that has been shown to us over the years. We're especially grateful this year for the part everybody played in helping us secure the state-funded grant for our new education center, which is on track to be ready in the fall of the next school year. So thank you very much.
Some days council meetings really are quite entertaining. For our next, we've got Councilmember Victoria Hunt with the Gun Violence Awareness Day Proclamation, joined by Bridget Shepard. Yeah.
Yes, and Bridget Shepard and all of the volunteers with Mom's Demand, if you would be able to join us up here. Thank you so much. Well, I am very honored to be giving this proclamation following the snacking porcupine. Thank you all for coming out. Whereas every day more than 120 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 are shot and wounded, with an average of more than 17,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 26 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other high-income communities. And whereas protecting public safety is a mayor's highest responsibility. And whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exacerbate gun violence after significantly increased gun sales, increased calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines, and an increase in gun violence across our country. And whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15, and to recognize her birthday in June, people across the United States have annually recognized the first Friday of June as National Gun Violence Awareness Day by wearing orange in tribute to Hadia Pendleton and other victims of gun violence and the loved ones of those victims. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our community safe. Now, therefore, I, Victoria Hunt, on behalf of Mayor Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim June 7th, 2024 to be Gun Violence Awareness Day in the City of Issaquah, and I encourage all residents to support efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. And Bridget, if you would like to say a few words, and thank you again for all of the volunteers that really show the support that you have in this community.
Thank you, Council. One last fact I wanted to share is that sadly 4.6 million American children live in homes with unsecured loaded weapons. So as we roll into the summer months and more children are at home, that's when we see a spike in injuries. If everyone could please commit to have 3 conversations with someone you know about that and ask, are your guns secured? And in a way that would keep them from children. We can do something in our community this year. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the volunteers.
All right. So I think actually
Hey, always lovely to have everyone join us and be able to recognize the important things. The next one, we've got ID 1608, Juneteenth Day Proclamation, and the city is proclaiming June 19th, 2024 to be Juneteenth Day in the city of Issaquah. The proclamation will actually be read and presented at the Village Market Juneteenth pop-up occurring in the Issaquah Highlands on June 15th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then I believe we have Deputy Council President Barb DeMichelle with the LGBTQIA plus Pride Month proclamation.
Thank you, Council President Hunt and Walsh. And this is Tiana Perry, who is the Program Director at the Garage, and I am so honored to be able to present this to you, Tiana. Whereas the month of June was designated Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall riots, which occurred in June of 1969 and are generally recognized as the catalyst of the LGBTQIA plus rights movement. And whereas City Council and staff have committed to make Issaquah an inclusive and welcoming community for all, including the LGBTQIA plus community. And whereas all members of the Issaquah community, including those who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning, intersex, and asexual, have the right to feel safe, not to be discriminated against, and to live without the threat of violence or harassment. And whereas supporting Issaquah's LGBTQIA plus community also aligns with the city's strategic plan, guiding principles of both people and equity. And whereas the LGBTQIA plus community has made great strides. However, work remains in order to achieve full equality, inclusion, and acceptance. And whereas Issaquah is strengthened by and thrives upon the rich diversity of ethnic, cultural, racial, gender, and sexual identities of its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant character of our city. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Mary Lou Pauley, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim the month of June to be LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in the City of Issaquah, and I invite the community to join me in celebrating the great diversity of our city, our commitment to eliminating prejudice everywhere it exists, respecting the rights of all people, and recognizing the contributions and achievements of the LGBTQIA+ community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and seal of the City of Issaquah this 3rd day of June, 2024. And Tiana, would you like to talk about the Garage Pride event? All right.
Thank you, Barb, and the rest of the City Council. Garage Pride, we're hosting our 5th annual Garage Pride event on Saturday, June 15th from 1 to 4 p.m. on the Community Center lawn. And that will be followed by the City of Issaquah's Equity Council's Pride panel in the garage from 4 to 6 p.m. Garage Pride is completely planned and executed by garage teens, the teens in our community, and garage staff, and we hope to see anyone at all welcome to the event.
Okay. And at this point, that concludes our proclamations. And while we would love for you all to stay for all of our wonderful city business, we do recognize that you have other things to do in the evening. So if you do need to leave, now is an appropriate time. We will be following this with audience comments. And so members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. If you're joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand or send the host a chat message. If you're on the phone, you can press *3. If you're on a computer or smartphone, you're going to look for the raise hand icon, or you can send the host a chat message. If you're in the room and did not sign up to speak, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. I will also note that there is a public hearing tonight, which is AB 8820, the 2025-2030 6-year transportation improvement program. And so if you have any comments specific to that, they need to be made during the public hearing, which will occur later in the meeting when that item is presented. So, Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak for general audience comments or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to read a few notes before we go on for those making comments. You're invited to address the council regarding matters that are directly related to Issaquah's programs, projects, services, or events. Comments related to political campaigns are not permitted. Please direct comments to the whole council and not to individuals. And while this is not a question and answer session, if we need to contact you to follow up, we will do so. When recognized, if you're virtual, you're going to unmute your microphone. If you're in person, step up to the lectern. You're going to press a button until it turns red. State your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently. And limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you're attending virtually and don't respond when your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed, and you're encouraged to rejoin the meeting if able. Personal attacks, obscene language, derogatory remarks, and disruptive behavior will not be permitted. Public comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process, and the city takes the comments seriously, and we thank you for taking the time to address us. So, Clerk, can you please identify the first person who has signed up to speak?
Yes, Ken Esseman.
Okay, Ken, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ken Eastman, and I'm representing the Tallis Residential Association this evening and the several thousand residents that live in Tallis. I'd like to recognize a member of the city staff for his exemplary support of the Tallis community. As members of the City Council, Mayor, and City Administrator's Office are probably aware, our community was very concerned about a developer that was finishing one of our neighborhoods that had not completed their landscaping obligations. We were concerned that the residents would be stuck with hundreds of thousands of dollars of dead plans, faulty irrigation, drainage issues, unsafe playgrounds, and more. There are several city staff members that were responsible for holding this developer accountable, and the good news is that the common areas will be turned over to the TRA in good condition. But there is one individual that stands out for his unwavering support of the interests of our residents. That is City Inspector Jason Bond. Jason has been on this project for several years and has held firm on the city requirements. No shortcuts, no sloppy work, no incomplete action items. The work is either done correctly or you don't get a city sign-off. I suspect there is a lot of pressure to just sign off the project and move on, but Jason kept the interest of the Issaquah residents as his top priority. In the end, we received property that was in good order and not a financial burden to our residents. And for this, we are very appreciative. Great job, Jason, and a heartfelt thank you from the Tallis residents. And I've submitted a copy of this letter to the city clerk. And Fisha tells me I have more than 3 minutes, so with my remaining time, I want to compliment Emily and the great open house at Public Works last week. If you're going to have all that stuff, why not show it off? So it was great to talk to the city staff members, Public Works, the people that take care of our community, the streets and the sidewalks, the people that keep the water and the sewer and the stormwater working correctly and are always there in emergency. And I learned a lot by talking to the experts. So thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Ken, for both of those recognitions. We appreciate it, and we'll make sure to pass it on. Clerk, do we have another speaker?
Yes, Dave Wagner.
Good evening, Council. My name is David Wagoner, and I live at 22529 Southeast 42nd Terrace in Providence Point in Issaquah. Fell in love with Providence Point, and I'm so glad we're up there. I came with a few things to talk about D-Day. So, some things I know about D-Day. I was born April 2nd, 1944. D-Day happened 65 days after I was born. I graduated from Issaquah High School on June 6th, 1962, 18 years after D-Day. Our VFW Post 3436 sponsored a flyover of 3 P-51 Mustangs on the 70th anniversary of D-Day just 10 years ago. I think Fred Butler was the mayor. This Thursday, June 6, 2024, our VFW Post will raise a brand new U.S. flag with the 80th anniversary D-Day flag, which will fly over the city, and I don't think many other municipalities on the east side are going to do this. Thank you. And I don't think many other municipalities will have the chief of police stand up with an old grunt and show this flag. Thank you, Chief. 5,700 men died on the original D-Day on Omaha Beach. There, on the first 2 hours of combat, their families' lives were changed forever. D-Day is the most significant amphibious military operation in the history of the world and remains the same today. My friend and fellow veteran Dick Nelms from Mercer Island was a pilot on a B-17 that bombed France to support the Allied invasion on D-Day. He bombed behind the lines. Dick is now alive in France today and will celebrate the 80th anniversary at 101 years of age. Dick will also be on Omaha Beach on that day. 619 veterans from Issaquah of all wars, to include 19 Civil War veterans, are buried in Upper and Lower Hillside Cemetery. Those veterans were honored on May 27th, 2024, by our post and the citizens of Issaquah. I'm grateful to be here tonight to tell you that this is going to happen. Not asking for permission, we're going to go over and take over the flagpole and do it. The other thing I came to inform you, this is my last year of doing this cemetery. I'm the actual service itself. Kind of tough to give that up, but it's time to pass the flag. Something else I want you to know is May 31st of this year, I completed 17 years on the King County Veterans Advisory Board. I think this spring I completed 6 years. I think it was 6 years. 6 years on the Transportation Advisory Board. And as many of you know, I was on the Cemetery Board for 12 years, 8 of which I was the chair. Jason Bond was my go-to guy with the city. And I got to tell you, that guy is, Ken sugar-coated it for you. He was a terrific help, and I couldn't have done it without him. So I want to thank you for the support that you give to our VFW Post 3436. And I hope that at 8 o'clock on Thursday morning, you just come with a cup of coffee and we'll put the flags up and we'll salute and honor D-Day. Thank you.
And Dave, would you take a moment and just come back up there for me for a second? So while it's not an official proclamation, we did recognize that you have done such a wonderful job with all of the Memorial Day events and all of the various things that you've helped with our community. And so we just wanted to say a little thank you for that and give you a little plaque to recognize all the years of service. So yeah, thank
Very
you.
kind.
Yeah.
So we're now doing pictures?
Oh, we're doing pictures. Okay, I hope the council will accept that little change of in the middle of public comments. Continuing on with public comments, Clerk, do we have anyone else signed up or indicating a desire to speak?
No, we have no virtual members of the public with us tonight.
Okay, I will look around. I don't think there's anybody else here looking to speak during public comment, but just wanted to take another moment and just recognize, my goodness, has this been fun tonight to see all of the community members and hear all of the celebrations and appreciation of staff and the recognition of so many years of service. So, gosh, brings a whole lot of meaning in. Okay, and as a reminder, we take emails too. You don't have to show up in person. We read them all. citycouncil@issaquahwa.gov. Any emails we always appreciate. So the next item of business is the consent calendar. The mayor does not have any remarks on the consent calendar. Are there any committee chairs or chair designees who would like to report on any of the consent calendar items? Yes.
There is consent item G, which is AB 8821, proposed amendments to Title 18 for emergency shelters and supportive housing. And this went by the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee. And so I wanted to report out from that meeting on that item. This was an item that was in response to the fact that the state legislature adopted House Bill 1220 in July of 2021, which amended the Growth Management Act and instructed local governments to plan for and accommodate housing affordable to all income levels. And it also mandated that cities could not prohibit transitional housing or permanent supportive housing in any zones where residential dwelling units or hotels are allowed. And so the city staff looked at Title 18, our land use code, and proposed amendments to make sure that we were compatible with this new state law. The Planning, Development, and Environment Committee deliberated on the proposed amendments at our May 7th meeting, and we had some recommendations which have been taken into consideration about making sure that the definitions were clear and consistent. And then most of our other discussion at that meeting was around potentially increasing the maximum number of occupants allowed in day centers and night shelters, and potentially expanding the zones in which day centers and night shelters are allowed. Because the Department of Commerce currently is refining the requirements in the House bill that was passed by the state, we, as the committee, ultimately did agree with the staff that we agreed with waiting to make changes and to see if there were potential amendments that would be required as a result of Commerce's changes and review of the law. And we also asked that staff track the creation of supportive housing in the region to make sure that our occupancy cap and our zones that we allow this housing in are compatible with the state law and also with what is being built in the region and what's in the market. And then lastly, we confirmed that these code changes do not impact the ability of groups such as churches to support homeless individuals, and this is governed under a different sort of permit. So the committee unanimously recommended approval of this ordinance, and it is on the consent calendar this evening.
Fantastic. Thanks for the summary. I assume none others? Nope. Okay. Fantastic. So the consent calendar was distributed to council in advance. If authorized, the items on the consent calendar will be considered together and approved by one motion. Have the payables and payroll been reviewed?
They have.
Okay. Does any council member desire to remove any items from the consent calendar and consider it under regular business? Seeing none, is there a motion? Yes.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Fantastic. The motion to approve the consent calendar as presented has been moved and seconded. Is there any council discussion? No. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay. Next item of business is our public hearing. This is AB 8820, 2025-2030, 6-year Transportation Improvement Program. And we are going to conduct the public hearing. I'd like to invite Senior Transportation Engineer Greg Lucas to make the presentation. Thank you. That looks great. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Thank you, Council President. Good evening. My name is Greg Lucas. I'm an engineer in the Public Works Department. I'm here tonight with John Mortensen to present on behalf of the proposed 2025 to 2030 6-year Transportation Improvement Program. The purpose of this item is to hold a public hearing for the proposed Transportation Improvement Program. The RCW requires agencies such as the City of Issaquah to hold a public hearing and adopt a transportation improvement program annually. For a little bit of background on this item, every 2 years the city adopts a 6-year capital improvement program. This is a process where staff reviews financials and plans out transportation projects, but also in other asset categories such as parks and utilities. And the chapter in the capital improvement plan relating to transportation doubles as that year's transportation improvement program. In years such as this, where there is no capital improvement program, capital improvement plan update, we need to adopt an updated transportation improvement program as a standalone program. And just in general, the TIP identifies projects and programs which phase the project and program is being advanced, such as design, construction, property acquisition, or planning, and whether or not funds are either secured or reasonably expected, and what the funding sources are and the amounts. And the Mobility Master Plan serves as kind of the foundational planning document for the Transportation Improvement Program, guiding principles, evaluation criteria, and scoring. This year, we also reviewed staff availability and funding sources when assembling the Transportation Improvement Program. This year, we've presented, myself and John, at the Transportation Advisory Board 3 times, January, February, and March for the TIP, and also the Environmental Board in March. A key highlight from the TIP update this year is we added 5 new projects, and we'll get to those in a subsequent slide. And lastly, we presented the proposed 6-year TIP to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee on May 14th this year, and feedback from the committee is also in this presentation. And this slide just shows kind of where we are in the process. We've gone through the boards, committee, we're here at the public hearing, and we're on this item coming back for adoption on June 24th special meeting. We'll submit to the state. So this slide's been used previously, but it's a kind of a good visual for contextualizing the Transportation Improvement Program. It shows that the TIP is not only a part of the capital improvement plan, but also is consistent with the city's comprehensive plans and policies. Projects in the capital improvement plan and the Transportation Improvement Program reflect the goals, policies established in many of the planning documents, some of which are shown here: the ongoing transit study, ITS plan, mobility master plan, park strategic plan. And there's several types of projects and programs within the TIP. We've got annual projects such as pavement management, ADA improvements, concrete management. We've also got projects underway. There are Newport Way, SR 900 to 54th, Newport Way Maple to Sunset. We've got Northwest Sammamish improvements. Got a planning on for a new crossing on I-90. We've also got mandated projects for public safety, retrofit for the bridge on Gilman, landslide repair on Newport Way, retaining wall replacement on Black Nugget Road. There's new priority projects, which we added 5 this year. We'll get to those. And then there's long-term projects that we've identified for the future, but don't currently have funding sources. So it could be added to a TIP in the future. So yeah, John and I met with TAB 3 times this year. First time in January, have a general review of the TIP, our plan to adopt it this year and our schedule. And then in February, we got into the mobility master plan, reviewed the guiding principles, the evaluation criteria and scoring. We made a few updates to it, but pretty minor. We kept the scoring overall the same. Kind of few minor changes on how we implement or gave out some of the points, particularly in the improved mobility within Issaquah and the promote environment guiding principles. And then after that meeting, we looked at the projects, we looked at the staff availability and funding sources, and we came up with the first version of the TIP and presented it at the TAB, got their feedback. We also, in between the February and March TAB meeting, John and I met with the Environmental Board. Here we presented the Promote Environment Guiding Principle in the Mobility Master Plan and the proposed updates to it from the TAB meeting. We also received feedback from the Environmental Board pertaining to alignment of it with the Climate Action Plan, considerations with the projects and the application of the criteria. There is a memo attached. There's a memo we received. I don't know if it's part of the public hearing, but yeah, the memo, and we went over that with the TAB as well. And these are the projects that we added. 5 new projects starting in, I guess, 2026 now, but most of them are 2028 or 2029. I'll go over each one real briefly, and feel free to ask any questions about them. So we got Front Street and Northwest Dogwood intersection improvements. We're showing starting design for this project in 2028. Here we would evaluate the alignment of the intersection, resurface the street, add a southbound right turn lane, for the traffic signal along with the other improvements. And as we begin design, we'll be able to pursue external funds. We think this one would be competitive for a state-administered PIB grant. Next project is the 3 Trails Crossing Study that Juniper and Gilman. There was some previous improvements here, but we'd like to see if there's anything else that we could be done here. There's always additional improvements anticipated here. This is a tricky intersection, particularly at the south leg. So this project was started as a planning study to see what could be done there. East Sunset Way is another study we're looking at. We received public feedback at this corridor, whether it's for bike lanes or parking, crossing improvements, transit improvements, or congestion relief. With all this competing interest in limited public space, the initial study would help us identify the improvements. Got, a lot of community outreach initially for this project. The next project is 220th Ave Southeast and Southeast 51st Street improvements. Or more non-motorized improvements, bike lanes, and maybe sidewalks. There's a development currently proposed on Southeast 51st Street. We've got some recent data showing this is kind of a popular corridor amongst non-motorized users. When we start design, we could look at either repurposing the 2-way left turn lane for bike lanes as a interim solution, or if we've got funding, we could look at the kind of the full 4th Street condition. This project would also be a pretty good grant candidate. And then the last project that we added was the citywide advanced signage project. Our staff recently developed a local road safety plan, and this came out of that. This plan looked at recent collision data and common characteristics of these collisions, and found that one thing that the city could do is install curve signage around at these critical corners to help alert drivers. And we'd also be looking at other improvements for safety at these locations as well. We originally had this project slated for 2029. During the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee, we heard some desire to move this up, and so we looked at advancing it, and we've now shown it in 2026. There's a call for a highway safety improvement program grant that year, and so we think this would be competitive for that. We do think we have staff availability for that year. We have made that update at our Mobility and Infrastructure Committee meeting. We have 2 projects that were removed from the TIP. However, I just wanted to express that these are still being implemented. These are bus stop improvements on Northwest Sammamish Road and Southeast 56th Street. Even though they're removed from the TIP, they're getting implemented through a grant that we received for pavement preservation along these roads. So when we do the design for pavement restoration projects, we'll be also incorporating these bus stop improvements. I just learned today what these were, and they're kind of cool. They, instead of the bus blocking the bike lane and half of the travel lane, they stay in the travel lane, and bikes ramp up. People getting on the bus will ramp. So be able to do that with our overlay project. And yeah, so we presented on May 14th the proposed 6-year TIP to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. We had a similar presentation, but we also discussed each project in a little bit more detail. TR 97 is the citywide advanced signage project. So we moved that project up from 2029 to 2026, as I mentioned earlier. Another comment we received was to add in the future year projects, note on which planning study they came from. And so we'll be adding that to a column. We didn't get into this year's, but we'll get into next year's. And then the last highlight from the committee meeting was on the Newport Way, or third Newport Way project that we're starting next year, design, and to look closely at the westbound. The eastbound's already got some improvements for congestion. So when we start design for that project, I actually got stuck in that traffic a few times since the last meeting. So once we start the design, we'll be looking at means to improve traffic at that. It'll be a challenge, but certainly we'll be looking into that. And so this item is scheduled to return for adoption on the consent calendar at the June 24th special meeting. Other options for tonight are to modify the transportation improvement program or to continue the public hearing to a date certain. And the recommendation is that the approval of the TIP, the resolution at the special council meeting on June 24th. Next steps would be the adoption on June 24th, and then the staff submitting it to the state secretary within 30 days of adoption. That's it for my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Well, before we go to questions, first of all, thank you, Greg. Appreciate you being here for the first time. Love that. Do either Deputy Council President DeMichelle or Councilmember Hall or both have any comments from the committee meeting? No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just say that we had, Greg did a really nice job of summarizing what we discussed. We did commend staff for the excellent job that they had done, and the presentation materials were very thorough, and we always appreciate that. We had a good discussion, and we did accelerate that one project to from 2029 to 2026. Appreciate the staff response on that as well, so thank you. And I don't think I have anything to add. Councilmember Hall, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, no, a good summary of our meeting for sure. I think we, as a committee, noticed that the newer projects were really focused on pedestrian and bike facilities and intersection improvements and things that are competitive for grant funding like you outlined, and things that are informed by data. So we liked that. We liked that there was a good mix of kind of pedestrian and multimodal system improvement projects and vehicle travel projects. And so we know that's been an important priority of council to make sure that's balanced living in our transportation improvement program. So we made sure to check that. And thank you for engaging so diligently with the Transportation Advisory Board and the Environmental Board as well. Yeah, no, good summary. Thanks.
Just to clarify, you guys did recommend approval.
And we did recommend approval with the change that the advanced signage project move forward.
Fantastic. Okay, so with that recommendation, I would like to open the public hearing at 7:52 p.m. And so at this point, we can take comments from the public on the transportation improvement project. So, Clerk, do we have anyone online?
No members of the public.
Okay, then I'm going to skip over the press star 3, all of that. But if anybody is watching and would like to email us, we always accept emails. And so we don't have any public comments then. City Council, do you have any objection to me closing the public hearing? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:53 p.m. Does council have any questions, comments? Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you for the presentation. One of the comments in the memo from the Environmental Board was around the change to the criteria that was used to score or used to the project selection criteria matrix. It used to be 2 years ago, for example, it used to be environmental impact, which could be perceived as negative or positive impact. And it is now climate resiliency or environmental benefit, I think suggesting a much more positive take, what are the benefits? And so the Environmental Board did question that change, and I wondered if you could speak to the rationale for that, and are we still representing if there is a negative environmental impact or negative impacts of projects?
Sure, yeah. What I remember, the Transportation Advisory Board, that's where that change came from. Let me make sure I got it correct. We went from project avoids environmental to now the criteria scores if it enhances the environment. Is that the change you're referring to?
So yes, I believe so. So specifically, it used to be in the 2022 TIP, it said environmental impact, and then it was defined as, is the project addressing an environmental concern, or would not completing the project result in a detrimental environmental impact? And it is now in the latest TIP, the criteria is climate resiliency or environmental benefit. And if this is something that we could get a memo on, that I would also be happy to ask in that way.
Sure. Yeah, let's do the memo.
Okay, thank you. So I think what would be helpful for me is the Environmental Board had that comment, and then a comment that you mentioned, which was alignment with the climate action plan. And so if you would be able to write about what changes were made in response to that, and then specifically why this change was made and how we are still addressing negative impacts in this criteria matrix, that would help. And since this is coming back to council, a memo would be great.
Okay, any other comments, questions, all of that? No? I did want to recognize, just in looking through it, how many additional grant projects there were. I was really impressed with the number of National Highway Grant projects and seeing those bus additions or the transit stop additions. We're not adding any buses, unfortunately. But no, just really appreciative of seeing that as a change and the recognition of how this has responded to our master mobility project plan and the Transportation Advisory Board. So I've seen that change over the years and wanted to appreciate that. So no action is being requested tonight. This item will return on the June 24th special city council meeting for adoption. Is there any objection to this returning on the consent calendar? No, that's fine. Okay, hearing none, this item will return on the consent calendar on June 24th for adoption. Thank you. Okay, so next item is regular business, and we have AB 8861, the Ziply Fiber Pacific LLC franchise agreement. And introducing this, I'd like to invite, oh, I was going to say Public Works Director Emily Moon, but okay. No, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, Council, Matt Ellis. I'm the Utility Engineering Manager for the city, and one of my current roles and responsibilities is franchise utilities. However, in May, we hired Kevin Thompson, who I believe he's virtual today, and he is our new capital program and franchise manager. So he, from now on, will be taking over this responsibility, and this is one of my last remaining utilities projects. But it did allow me to go through the code and the requirements. I do. Also here tonight is George Thompson, the legal counsel for Ziply, and then also our attorney, Rachel Turpin, and Emily Moon. So we don't have a presentation for tonight, so I apologize. But I'm just going to go through a quick information on the franchise agreement, as well as a little bit of education on what a franchise agreement is. Just a few quick bullet points and allow you to ask some. So Ziply Fiber is applying for a standard franchise agreement for telecommunications. In the packet, and I am not showing it, I can show it if you want, is a map showing the proposed location of the future Ziply connection. And these are proposed and does not show the exact location of facilities or means or methods for construction. And while the map does depict existing pole locations, Ziply will be required to underground their facility. Telecommunications ordinances are required to comply with the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996. This legislation stipulates that local government regulations may not prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the provision of telecommunications services. State law generally provides that for franchise agreements, the city must act upon a complete franchise application within 120 days from the date that a service provider files a complete application for franchise. There's also a requirement to take any franchise agreement to council twice. Once to present the franchise, which we are doing tonight, to allow council to ask questions, make recommendations or comment. And then if there are any substantive if there are no substantive changes, we'll bring this back to council at the next council meeting to ask for approval. Due to the tight timelines for processing franchises, the city uses a very standard template to streamline the review. The proposed Ziply franchise is substantially similar to other franchises that we've approved in the city, including the EXO Communications franchise agreement, which we approved last spring. A franchise grantee may locate its facilities anywhere within the franchise area, consistent with the city's applicable code requirements and the city's design and construction standards. The city's telecommunication regulations are adopted in Chapter 12.60 of the Issaquah Municipal Code, which the city's franchise template largely differs to and incorporates by reference. Any new extensions must meet city codes, which under Issaquah Municipal Code 1260-500B means placing new facilities underground. However, the Public Works Director may allow deviation from this requirement, but only under very specific circumstances, such as an undue hardship as defined in the code, or when the requirement of a statute or tariff prohibits enforcement of the underground requirement, or require city ratepayers to pay for such undergrounding. For clarification, a franchise agreement is authorization to extend facilities within the city. A franchise agreement does not dictate the location or means of construction, but rather authorizes use and extension into the city. Any actual work requires a submittal of a right-of-way permit under Issaquah Municipal Code 1260-390, which will dictate the location of new facilities at specific locations. Typically as franchise agreements with neighboring jurisdictions, including and not limited to Redmond, Kirkland, Federal Way, and Bellingham. This franchise agreement will last for 5 years, which is the standard timeline for these agreements. Franchise will need to be a franchisee will need to request a renewal at the end of that 5 years. 5 years is a very short time for a franchisee, but ensures that if there are any issues, the city will have another opportunity to address any issues of concern, if any, with a franchisee within the relatively short period of time. At that time, they can extend. The agreement is similar to recent approved agreements that we've brought before council in the past year, including XO and AT&T. And the only difference is Ziply is a new franchisee, whereas the others were renewals. That is all I have. Are there any questions?
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Brett.
Super confused.
I know.
What kind of service are they providing?
They are telecommunications, so fiber. So they go power.
Fiber landlines
Correct.
for phone and data service.
Yeah, internet.
Internet service. I see. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other council questions? Okay, I will ask one. Matt, you said that this has to comply with all of our codes, and so in order to be able to provide a public benefit and utilize our right-of-way, if they do any destruction of right-of-way in order to get their cabling underground, I believe there's a code that requires them to repave that portion of the street and not just small little patchworks, but was it half of the lane?
That is a difficult question because it depends on when the street was paved last.
Okay.
But yes, usually there is some restoration requirements associated with it. And it depends on the amount of impact to the roadway. I think John left, but John Mortensen is usually the one that has a better understanding of the restoration requirements.
Yeah, I'm just recognizing that there is a community benefit, but there's also a community disruption if something like that goes on. And so one of the things that I know we made sure when we were adopting code was that there was a recognition that that wouldn't come with an undue burden on the community. While they have to deal with construction, they don't have to deal with a road that is
destroyed,
permanently destroyed and such. Yeah,
that is correct. It has to be restored back to its current condition, and that's why they have to go through a right-of-way permit. So the franchise is just allowance to use the city, enter the city, and do business. And then when they go to the specific location, they would have to get a right-of-way permit, and then that goes into all the restoration that is required.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. So again, no action is being requested tonight to allow for the required 5-day introduction of this item that's required by state law. This item will return on the June 24th special city council meeting for adoption. Is there any objection to this returning on the consent calendar? Any objection to this returning on the consent calendar? Okay. Hearing none, this item will return on the consent calendar on June 24th for adoption.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and next item of business is AB 8859, the Lateral Corrections Officer Hiring Bonus Memorandum of Understanding. We're being asked to ratify, and I'd like to invite Police Chief Schwan to the podium for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. So corrections officers, obviously we have many of them. We have our own jail, as you discussed, that many are unaware of. In our community and in the corrections world right now, there's signing bonuses for hiring for anywhere from $7,000 to $25,000 for lateral officers within the state and within our general local area. Specifically, Linwood, $25,000. King County is $12,000 to $25,000 in pay/incentives, and Puyallup has the $10,000 signing bonus. Kirkland does not have one. And so in addition to maintaining, for the job of corrections, in addition to maintaining safety and security inside the jail, corrections officers serve as a pro-social model for adult inmates by modeling appropriate behavior and holding inmates accountable for those actions when necessary. The job is challenging, infused with risk, but rewarding in protecting the community. Important responsibilities of a CO include maintaining and consistent routines and in their demeanor, because security and control are vital in corrections. Hiring average in Washington for CO is 31.78 days. It takes a while to get someone onboarded, where a lot of others you can hire and then the next day or two you can have someone come on board and be hired. There's lots of steps, just like with a police officer. There's applications, interviews, polygraphs, backgrounds, drug testing, and onboarding with uniform sizing and everything else that goes along board with that. The jail around our community don't have the positives that we do, because a lot of those they have to do, for example, at bigger jails, they're sitting in one person in a pod with up to 50 people, and you're tasked with one thing. You're either in bookings, or you're in security, or you're in just different pieces of it, where the positives that we have in our jail are you get to do all the aspects. You get to do a booking, intake, court, transport, visitation, evaluations, dispensing of meds, handling disputes, etc. No shifts are the same, and dispatch is watching, observing, and close by with patrol in the event there is an emergency. Our jail is a positive place and a need for those incarcerated, and keeping staffing up is necessary to maintain that. So I asked them for amendment with the MOU for adding the $10,000 signing bonus. Currently, our staffing, we are down 4. And so just to know where we're at, we did hire someone there. They started today, and we do have 2 others in background, so we're in the process. And then we are looking for another transport person, as well as the jail manager is also someone that's in backgrounds, but has not been hired yet. So we do have people in the works. We are still looking, but it's with people retiring that have been here, like Sergeant Enders for 32.5 years. We have another that's left that had 20 years experience. Dan Cheney recently retired, was a transport. He had 20-some years on. So attrition is happening because we've had people that have been long-standing that are here. We still have others that are long-standing and in our community as well and working for us. And so we want to be able to bring people in that want to be here and want to be applying. And that's hard to do, especially in getting different. We'd like some female corrections officers because we don't have any. And some of our patrol are having to do some of the tasks that take on, you have to, it's female, myself included. And so those are part of the job, but it would be nice to have a little bit more diversity down there regarding gender as well. We do have some females, which not all jails do. That's another aspect of that. So happy to answer any questions regarding.
Okay. Councilmember Hall.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for highlighting this need and coming to us with this. I'm just curious, some of the new hires that are working their way through the system that you just mentioned, are those laterals, or are there people going to the corrections academy?
We've had both. The ones we've had onboarded most recently are laterals, but we do have a couple that are brand new, which sometimes that's a good thing. But most of the people that we've had have been laterals and that are happy because they haven't had to work mandated 16-hour shifts regularly. We had one person that applied, had worked over 800 hours of overtime last year. And a lot of those were mandatory. So that's another positive aspect of our jail. We've been really good about our staffing levels, keeping it to where it's safe, but at the same time, managing the schedule to where it's not having to be so egregious that they're working long, long hours. And so they want that work-life balance, and that's another reason that they do come to us.
And thank you very much. I appreciate that detailed explanation. So the signing bonuses in the other jurisdictions that you described, have you noticed that these jurisdictions have had success after implementing that, bringing in the kinds of candidates that they need?
Some of them, yes. Some of them, one of ours has left actually and gone to one of theirs as well. It's hard to compete with $25,000 signing bonus just to go to another location. It's also a brand new shiny facility, so that can help with different things as well. But as far as staffing levels, again, ours is attrition, as well as it is just the nature of the work that they do. There's a lot of drawbacks in being a confined space, and it's not for everybody. And the type of people that do it, and again, it's out of sight, out of mind. People that live in our community, lived here for years, and some of them don't even know that we have a jail. But it's a necessity, and it's huge for even our staffing for patrol, because to have that opportunity to bring someone, and instead of me contacting somebody and saying, here's a piece of paper, you're gonna need to go to court because we don't have someone to take or somewhere to take you to jail, we have an opportunity for that here. And so having those officers in that place and bringing it, as you know, we've mandated, we've gone from 1 to 2 person minimum down there, which is a much safer environment, as well as implemented more supervision. And so just a larger part, and especially with the nature of society these days, and it's can get a little more violent, and with mental health being another issue, those are other aspects of it that become a little bit more difficult to do their jobs. And so this just assists in that process and makes sure we have those right staffing levels and those people in place. And so it's important that we get the right people in place for that. And having some people with experience is, whether it be out of state or in state, is a big deal. And some of the people are actually advertising out of state, one of the agencies, and they actually have a $5,000 moving bonus as well if they come from out of state and are lateral to move into the state on top of. And that's one of the incentives that I noticed that King County had on top of that's why I said incentives. It wasn't all about just the pay or a price tag on being, if you come from another agency to start with us, that they do different incentives and ways that they gauge that. So.
Okay. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Chief, for this presentation. When a Seattle Seahawks wide receiver signs and they get a signing bonus, they get the $1 million right away upon signing. But ours is a little bit different, in fact. And they don't get the $10,000 right away under this agreement. Could you go through the guideposts or the different points that they have to get past in order to get the breakdown, the $10,000?
I can tell you how we've done that with the patrol, and I can let Stephanie speak to the fact of how we're breaking it down for corrections. But it was in increments. For example, for patrol, they get a certain amount at start, their first day on the job or their first paycheck. The next is after they've cleared FTO or field training, and then the one after that is a certain amount that's last increment that is after they've cleared a year with the city. And also along with that is typically that they have to be agreed to stay on board for up to 3 years, or they have to repay that amount. And that's typically, I imagine, is the exact same, except for the amounts are a little bit different, that's all. Oh, it's 3, 3, and 4. So yes, very similar to what our patrol hiring bonuses is.
So would it then be fair to say that it's an incentive to come in, but it's also an incentive to continue to work here over time and continue to make the milestones for good employment, or the milestones to be a competent and strong employee?
100%.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And let's not get any recognition or any suggestion that we're giving a $1 million bonus, because that's not in the budget. I can tell you that much.
I just wanted to break down the $10,000 so our citizens knew that there were incentives and mileposts to get that bonus. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I appreciate the analogy as well. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, so do you want to? Right there. Okay, Deputy Council President.
Thank you. I move to ratify the Memorandum of Understanding between the city and the Issaquah Police Support Services Association regarding the Lateral Corrections Officer Hiring Bonus Program and authorize the mayor to execute the Memorandum of Understanding.
Second.
Okay, this has been moved and seconded. Any comments before we vote? Okay, fantastic. So the motion in front of council is to ratify the Memorandum of Understanding between the city and the Issaquah Police Support Services Association, IPSA, regarding the Lateral Corrections Officer Hiring Bonus Program and authorize the mayor to execute the Memorandum of Understanding. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, and I believe, thank you, Chief Schwan, appreciate it. I believe that is the rest of our regular business, and so now we have committee and regional reports. So we will start with Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. The June Cascade Water Alliance update will be sent via email to you in the next couple of days. Cascade Board will be having a meeting on June 26th at 3:30 in the afternoon. And the Cascade Water Alliance Public Affairs Committee meeting is scheduled for this Wednesday, has been canceled. And that concludes my report on Cascade Water. However, in June, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee will be meeting. And the date of that meeting will be actually the same day as the Cascade Board meeting. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee will be meeting at Tibbetts Manor, 3 p.m. on Wednesday the 26th. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Our next meeting for the Eastside Fire and Rescue Board of Directors is next Thursday, June 13th. We will be officially referring budget discussions to the Finance and Administration Committee. I am the city's representative on that committee, and also Deputy City Administrator, CFO, and all of the titles. Andrew Snyder will be joining me at that meeting as well. So we'll be sure to report back to you. That's our very first kind of flavor of where the EFR budget is going to head. And that committee meeting is Wednesday, June 26th. It's open to the public if anyone wants to listen in or join, and we'll be sure to keep you informed in the process. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Council President. There is no June meeting of the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, and I have no other meetings to report out on.
Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Council President Walsh. The Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, June 12th at 7 p.m. It'll be an online meeting. Amongst the things we will be discussing, an update on Crisis Care Center implementation plan from Regional Policy Committee from RPC, possible action on PIC operating policies, which is a subgroup that I have been working on for updating of PIC's operating policies, which has been something like 12 or 14 years since that's been updated. An update on the Metro free youth transit passes, and a continuing discussion, as I mentioned at my last report, on the regional alignment on asylee and refugee crisis that we talked about. That is impacting to differing levels, different communities in King County. The County Services Council Services Safety and Parks Committee met on May 28th. We talked about COM 0041, Court and Criminal Justice Services. We got an extensive presentation from Judge Stewart, Lynn Moberly, the city prosecutor, Alexa McBaron, the prosecuting attorney, and Sean McCulley, public defender. The committee provided input by requested additional information on compensation for the prosecuting attorney contract over time, expressed support for the quality of the municipal court and their care for those who come through the court system, including probation services, and was interested in understanding reasons for recent increases in DUI and domestic violence charges, which we saw in the statistical information that was presented to us. Second issue was COM 0042, traffic safety camera update from the chief. And the net on that is the committee unanimously, I am just having trouble this evening, unanimously expressed support for adding an additional school zone safety camera on Newport Way Northwest, and then moving forward with an evaluation of a red light photo enforcement camera system. And then beyond that, the committee added our own little zinger in that we expressed support for evaluating the impact of a school zone speed camera along Park Drive in the Highlands. So asking the administration to take a look at that and what that might entail. This concludes my report.
Thank you for that. Deputy Council President DeMichelle.
Thank you very much. Most of my meetings all occur the second week of each month, so I have no report about what happened, but coming up soon, the regular Regional Transit Committee meeting is canceled for June, but there will be an in-person meeting and tour of the Metro Transit Control Center on the afternoon of June 10th. And then on June 13th, the Eastside Human Services Board of Directors will meet. And then on June 14th, the Eastside Transportation Partnership will meet in person at Redmond City Hall. And so that concludes my report.
Excellent. For my report, the Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Policy Board meets this Thursday. The agenda includes several discussion items, including the comprehensive plan review, work plan and approach, housing trends for AAPI populations, and the Puget Sound Regional Council's equity tracker. And then the King County Affordable Housing Committee also meets on Thursday, and we're going to have an exciting time reviewing Burien's comprehensive plan housing element and look at the comment letter on that. And that concludes my report. Going on to the mayor's report, I'll note that there is no mayor's report tonight. So we get to move on to informational updates, and we've got another exciting one here, ID 1717, informational update on the MetroFlex pilot program, and we've got John Larson-Friend coming to the podium for us. Thank you.
Already on the way. Move all the WebEx windows out of the way. Good evening. My name is John Larson-Friend. I am the Transportation Program Coordinator, and I'm here to talk about MetroFlex, give you a little update how it's going. Yeah, that's my purpose. Same thing. Going to give you an update on how the MetroFlex pilot program is progressing. A little bit of background, timeline-wise, just to give you a reminder. So last August, you all approved the contract with Metro. Service began on October 16th. October 23rd, we had the council launch event outside here. Thank you to all of you who were able to attend. During Q4, Metro did this big marketing blitz. It included a billboard with my face on it, which was weird. A bunch of social media. People told me, oh, I saw you on YouTube or saw the program on YouTube. You know, just kind of the regional wide, really big blitz of MetroFlex as a whole, and then targeted here in Issaquah as well. As an administration, from the city side, we also engaged in social media posts. We did a yard sign campaign. Some of them are still out there. And then I've been also giving presentations to special groups around the city as well. And here's some of that media that the city did. Quick overview of what the program is, just to remind you. So this is an on-demand ride app that is open to the public. Riders get to request a ride on demand using said app, call center. There's also a web booking option as well. Within the service area outlined here, the Issaquah service area, riders would provide a start and end point anywhere within that area, and the app would give them an ETA for pickup. Riders are asked to walk to a nearby pickup location unless a disability is noted, and then they don't have to walk. And then riders join a shared ride with hopefully 15-minute, that's the goal, on average pickup time. Fare is the same as the bus, and then if you have an Orca card, transfers are included. Under the contract, as we talked about several months ago, the contract included ridership data, average daily trips, preventable accidents, PMT, VMT, which is persons mile traveled ratioed to vehicle miles traveled, percentage of trips in equity priority areas outlined by Metro, rides per vehicle hour, and cost per ride. Metro also has been supplementing with that requirement with all of the other additional data here, which is percent of trips on time, percent of trip sessions with seat unavailable. There's a correction there. It said available in your original packet. Percent of wheelchair accessible vehicle seat unavailable, percentage of shared trips, preventable collisions per 1 million, I looked this up, vehicle revenue miles, percentage of reduced fare trips, average trip distance, average wait time for wheelchair accessible vehicle, customer rating, there's like a star that you can do, and percent of proposals filtered out for pick. I do want to note that everything with an asterisk, that data comes packaged as county-wide data, system-wide. Everything else without that asterisk will be specific to Issaquah. So I'll walk you through some data, which is very exciting for me. So I have the performance metrics laid out here, and then the goal, and then comparing the Q4 2023 data with the Q1 2024 data. So for example, we have total ridership. I set the goal at 5,000 at least. Since I submitted this presentation, I've adjusted that to 4,000. I think that amount as a goal better reflects the community. I'm comparing it to Sammamish and the percentage of riders that they have versus our population. So I think 4,000 is actually more appropriate. I wanted to note that. First quarter, we had just over 1,000 riders, which it's a little low, but it was also a very new type of service and just a new service in general for Issaquah. And then, as you'll notice, this first quarter of this year, we had 2.5 times that of riders, which is great. Average weekday rides increased from 13 to 35 per day, which is great. Percent of trips on time, well above the threshold that Metro has, which is that 95%. So basically 98 to 99% of trips are on time. Metro also has a metric of at least 50%, which we're a little bit under, but we're in there for shared trips. I feel like that's a solid number for a service like this, the 47 and 48%. Percent of sessions with seat unavailable. This is where things, well, as you can tell, there's demand for this service. So that means that there is a higher than normal amount of rider queries, hey, I'd like a ride, that returns with, oh, sorry, we don't have a seat for you. It started out with 8.2%, bumped up to 10% this last quarter. Metro has already started to address this issue. We started off with those 3 vehicles, and I'm happy to report they've already pushed it up to 4. I don't know if they're going to talk about 5 or 6. I don't know what that looks like, but I can confirm we're up to 4 at this point. Percent of wheelchair accessible seat unavailable queries, started low, and then now we're at 17%, which is very high. I think that's just because we've been doing a lot of presentations to older folks in the community. So therefore, there's going to be a higher amount of people who want to use this service. In the system, there 2/3 of the vehicles are non-wheelchair accessible, and 1/3 are wheelchair accessible. So there's that limitation within the system as well. We have rides per vehicle hour. Again, Metro has a goal of 2 per vehicle hour, and we're right there. So I think that's great. Cost per ride, first quarter we were over 40, and now we've dropped a few dollars, which I think is great. I think the reason why we had over 40 in that first quarter, well, A, it was a new service, so there are less people using it. But B, because of the way that Metro kind of does this metric is whatever money is being poured into this program, including that marketing budget, that was a surge in money coming in, that did contribute to that number. So it probably ballooned it by $1 or $2, probably. Average wait time, again, we are over that 15-minute threshold, and that's because of that demand piece. We're sitting at basically 19 minutes before, and then this last quarter, 22 minutes, so it's going up a little bit. Again, adding that extra vehicle they're trying to rebalance the system a little bit. I think that specific thought about this. Yeah, I'll just go on. But I do want to share this map with you. I asked for a heat map of service areas, and they gave me this one. I think it's from first couple weeks in April. I think it may be the second week in April. So it's a very specific time, but this map shows that basically the more purple or pink an area is, the more demand or pickup or drop off there is at that location. So the 2 transit centers had high hits there. The high school, we know that kids love this program. It's the thing I hear about the most. Kids are using it for better or for worse, but they are using it. They find a big sense of freedom with it. And then also the Issaquah Commons Shopping Center. I do want to note that the 2 neighborhoods that kind of inspired us to go after this program was Squawk and Tallis. Tallis is looking pretty good. Obviously, I'm sure there's more we could do to do outreach there. Squawk is a little bit more sparse, which is, well, we've already noted it, and I've already kind of reached out to our communications team to see if we can do some sort of regular campaign or something like that. I think we can do more. I reached out to Metro to see if they had any neighborhood specific targeting they had planned. They said they don't generally do that. They just kind of do the whole service area. They don't do targeted things, but I think we have the power to go after that a little bit more. Next steps will be, if you would like me to, I can return to you with a memo or a presentation after a full year after the contract has been completed. Now I can take any questions that there might be.
Any questions? Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. John, I really appreciate the presentation and appreciate your willingness to be at a table during the Public Works extravaganza that happened recently. I spent some time talking to you about this project and you answered all my questions. I'm wondering, the transit dilemma that we have sometimes is the flexibility of the program, and whether or not the service provided gives people enough of an opportunity to get the bus or to get the car in this case when they want to. What are you seeing on the ground with this service? Has it been flexible enough for people to take it up on a regular basis? And is that one of the challenges, or in the Squawk Mountain area, for instance, are there other challenges that might be hidden behind the numbers a little bit?
Sure. I think the thing that's really hidden is the reliability piece. So we see that the 2022 number of minutes that people have to wait. I've been able to use it within 10 or 15 minutes, but I've also gotten 45. So I think that I've been having to tell people during presentations, like, think ahead. You might have to be a half hour early. You might have to be 15 minutes early. If you see a ride starting basically an hour out, if you see one, just take it. Because at this point, the service is still trying to rebalance. And I remember what I was going to mention with those numbers now. The reason why if you took a look at the numbers that I included for the whole system, and that includes Sammamish, the numbers are a little bit more reliable up in Sammamish. The reason why is program is so much more established up there. It's been around for a whole year. They had community ride before that, so they already had an active base of people who were using it all the time. And they have, I think, 7,000 rides per quarter, which is great for them, but it does end up, I think, taking the gravity of the program north. And I've been told that, yes, if someone in Issaquah, if all 3 or 4 vans are up north and somebody requests it down south, that's an extra 10 minutes that that driver has to come on. So that if they were going to be 15 minutes away anyway, and then you add the extra 10, it's 25, that type of thing. So I think that that's probably the biggest issue that we're facing with the program. And I, in talks with Metro, that they are well aware of it and they're working to address it.
Great, thank you for that answer. I'll be anxious to see the 1-year report then, to see how we're doing with pickup. Appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Hall, and then Deputy Council President DeMichelle.
Thank you. So exciting to see this data and kind of the trend in the right direction that we want to see. I'm hesitant to ask this because you're right. The focus of this program was really to deliver better outcomes or connection opportunities for Talus and for Squawk, right? But in your conversations with Metro, I'm curious, what are the kinds of metrics that they would need to see in order to consider expanding service area to like the Highlands or other neighborhoods? The Highlands in particular, because ever since it started, I've met with a number of residents, and also the associations are very eager to try to understand how could we expand up there. So I'm just kind of curious in your thought, what's the next step to?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Brian Henry, who was over here when I presented originally. Not him, but and I asked that very question: what would it take for us to start talking? Because I believe that they made it clear, like, yeah, we'd love to talk about it. Basically, from my conversation with him, I think it was mid last month. I think that, well, Highlands specifically, I asked about specifically what would it take to have this conversation, and his response was basically, let's talk about it later, because the way Metroflex is, basically he told me they're kind of in just like, we need to just stop for a second and like make sure that our existing services are doing well. They have one service that's going to be launching in July, which hasn't been announced. But they have one that's coming. They have Linwood coming. They have all these light rail line Metroflex systems that they are planning to put into place, because obviously as a region we want to get as many people to light rail as possible. So I think that means that I would say we would have more power to talk about those type of expansions probably around the time that we start talking about the next contract negotiation. It's not guaranteed. Maybe mid next year they're like, yeah, sure, let's try it. But they always kind of repeat that we're the second largest service area. If we push it up in the Highlands, will be the largest service area. We already have long wait times, not long, but longer than we would like wait times. So I think that the answer right now is we need to probably take the time to make sure the system is growing, but also consistently. And I don't think Metro is ready to have those discussions yet. But as their system grows, theoretically, we could have those conversations too.
Deputy Council President.
Thanks. Councilmember Hall asked the question I was going to ask, but I'll come up with a different question. First of all, I had the great pleasure of seeing John in action at Providence Point last week. They had a standing room only presentation about access in Metroflex, and it was really great. And so just a question about outreach. The reason I was there is I have a friend at Providence Point who invited me, and we've been talking about how to use the app and all of that. And just wondering if there is anything in addition that we can do for people who maybe aren't familiar with apps, or people with language barriers, or those kinds of things that need that little extra somebody helping them to get onto the app and figure out how it works, because the enthusiasm in that room was sky high. It's just, you know, how do you go from theoretically using the app to actually getting onto the service? So that's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think now that we have 6 months under us, I think we now have an established service. I would call it established. I think that now is the time to, along with thinking about, okay, how can we do more targeted outreach to different neighborhoods, we can also start thinking about targeted outreach to different demographics as well. So I think that's probably what I'll focus on with this project over the next 6 months is how can we increase access and knowledge about the service.
Great. Well, I always appreciate other council members helping to recognize the need in the Highlands, because I was certainly going to highlight that again and always will. On the idea of access and all of that, I suggest you take a bunch of the high schoolers who are utilizing this in Metroflex vans up to Providence Point and mesh the two, talking about usage and all of that. I will say my teenagers have been heavy users of it and have very much appreciated that as a possibility. So I guess I just wanted to highlight, you kind of said, hey, we're seeing 22-minute wait times and 10% unavailable seats. Metroflex hasn't said anything about at what point it would kind of require or push them to add another vehicle to the service area?
They do not share that process. No. I was told, I think, after the fact. They didn't send an email like there's a fourth vehicle today. Like it's nothing like that. It was in the I think it was the Q4 report from last year that they said, yeah, by the way, there's another vehicle up there. So.
Okay. Yeah, I would be interested because obviously we weren't able to put those types of metrics into a contract. But I would be particularly interested as we're also seeing longer wait times happen in Sammamish and some of the other communities that are utilizing it, whether there's any sense of a way to kind of come together as communities that use this to push toward that idea. So. Yeah,
and to add to that, I think I'm sure that Metro is looking at all of their systems holistically, and Issaquah is in that metric, but as they're also trying to expand in Linwood and other areas. Sure. Well, okay. Well, we need to put that one vehicle that we would add to Issaquah Sammamish over there because we do need it over there because there's more population and blah blah blah. So I think, yeah, it's hard to recognize the context of the whole region and but also pushing for the service that
Yeah, but luckily that isn't one of the things I have to do as a council member for Issaquah. I just have to advocate for the services that our community wants to get out of the contracted payment that we've made on this, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Council Member Hunt.
Thank you. I am also a user of this service, similar comments to my colleagues. I think the reliability is something to keep an eye on because the 20-minute, if that's the average and it's a pretty tight distribution and it's usually around 20 minutes, then that's different than if it's, you know, you need something and it's 45 minutes. And I have also encountered the 45 minutes and then thought maybe there's a different way to do this. So I think that reliability is important for the continued use so that people know they can count on it to get them where they need to be in time for the bus, for example. The other thing is, just to pile on, if you look at the heat map and then also where it looks at the utilization, the little sliver of Issaquah Highlands that is in the service range has a lot of users, and that is the number one thing that I've heard from the community is people that aren't in the service area wondering why they aren't in the service area and really wishing that they were in the service area, and specifically the Highlands. There are a lot of people there, as was pointed out by Council President Walsh when we last saw this. There's a big elevation change. There's a high density of families that have kids, that students that would want to use these services, seniors that would want to be able to get to different locations throughout the city. And then there's the hospital, which it would be great to make sure that people within the community could get to that hospital as well as the transit center. So I do think that is, if we can push for something with Metro, I would really look to them and say, here's the data. We have a lot of reason to believe that our community would really benefit from expanding into the Highlands. And I would definitely advocate for that. In talking with the drivers, they have reported that there's sometimes confusion about that the service doesn't always take you to exactly the location that you're dropped off. Sometimes you have to walk a little bit. I have found that they basically take you exactly where you need to be, but just something for the messaging that the drivers have reported to me that they sometimes get, people have concerns about that. So just for expectation setting. I've had a great time using the service. I've had really good feedback. The one thing is really the service area, and it's specifically Highlands.
Council Member Hall and then Deputy Council President DiMichele.
I just thought of something else. So the data that we have access to is great, but how are we able to capture feedback or like evaluate demand for service hours? Because right now it stops at 6 p.m. That is not the same across other jurisdictions that have MetroFlex. Sometimes I think one of them even went past midnight. But how are we kind of evaluating what our riders are thinking about times and what the demand might be in the future for service hours?
That's a great question. I would say, so first of all, those other service hours, I believe the ones that go to midnight or after are generally around light rail stations, because that's kind of the point of those. As far as submitting feedback, I would say either emailing me or literally reaching out to Metro via their hotline. That's also a great way to give feedback. I've been trying to kind of push to see, like, are there other ways that we can get feedback about service area, about hours, about all those other things. Those two seem to be the most reliable ways to get the beast that is Metro to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point on service times, because I've also been hit by that and gone, oh, I wanted to be there by, so, yeah.
Well, it's just, I'd love to use it to come to council meeting, but we go past 6. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Deputy Council President.
Just a little follow-up too, and again, going back to how you use the app. The first ride that I took, it wasn't clear where I was supposed to meet the van. I was in a big shopping center, where do I meet it? Well, luckily I saw him and I waved, and, but it's not really clear on the app exactly where you're supposed to do that. And if you're not, again, if you're someone who's not used to using an app, it's, I don't know how we give more nuanced information to riders, but somewhere in there, it really is needed. The other thing that leapt out at me, and I wanted to ask you about it, was it says here that our customer rating is a 5. And that's a perfect score.
It is.
And so are we easy graders, or is, you know, I mean, that's a pretty stunning customer satisfaction rating when we're just right out of the gate. So any thoughts about that, or?
I would say it looks great, but it's possible people are shutting the app before they get to the start. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
that struck me interesting as well. It looks great.
It looks fantastic, and so we'll just watch it and see how it does over the next quarters.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think in general, it also just, there are high ratings across the Metroflex area, and it just shows how much people appreciate that type of service at bus fare rates. So, yeah. Okay, well, we appreciate all of the efforts there and keeping us informed. Is there anything else you need from us?
No, this is
Okay.
this is great. Thank you for your questions, and yeah, we'll keep an eye on it, and I'm excited to see what the next 6 months brings.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Okay, next item on our agenda is good of the order. Does anybody have any good of the order? Yep, Councilmember Hall.
Really quickly, again, I just wanted to thank Director Emily Moon and everyone else who contributed to the open houses for the Public Works. It was the internal one that I went to was really fun. And also thank you for taking Council President Walsh and I on a little tour of one of our agenda items on the consent calendar tonight, which was remodeling some of that space to better meet the needs of those employees. It seemed like it was so much work that you and your team went through to put that on, and I heard nothing but raves from everyone. So congratulations on that. I also just wanted to say, I think this is the last council meeting before Councilmember DiMichele and I go to the Association of Washington Cities conference. Is it just us? Is anyone else going? So just a heads up that we'll be reporting back. I was just looking at the schedule, and it's a lot of fun stuff. So we'll report back about how that goes.
Councilmember Martz.
Thank you. I want to thank David Wagner for pointing out the 80th anniversary of D-Day. My grandfather, Dick Curley, was flying B-26 Martin Marauder bomber on D-Day at Omaha, and I got to share lots of conversations with him about that, and until he passed away 6 years ago. But I think it's important to remember D-Day, not just because of the extraordinary bravery of all the folks on that day, but also the fact that the United States then rebuilt Europe and implemented the United Nations and basically helped dismantle the colonial European empires afterwards, and basically did not act like every other conquering empire of the last 1,000 years, but basically went in and tried to make the most of the amazing victory that we had over the genocidal and totalitarian empire that we were aligned against. So that's really the amazing bit of D-Day and the sacrifices that the men and women of D-Day made. So I just want to thank again David Wagner for pointing it out and giving us an opportunity to think about what America's like at its finest.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, looking at the notes, we've got a few upcoming council meetings. The June 10th Committee of the Whole meeting, while it will not be a public extravaganza of proclamations, we will be taking our own tour of the Fire Station 71, Police Department, and Court. That meeting will start earlier, so it will start at 6 p.m. And then following the tour, we are going to get dinner. We've got a taco bar being presented. And then we've got the agenda item on enhancing permit review efficiency. So that will be an extravaganza that night. And then there will not be a council meeting on June 18th due to the Association of Washington Cities meeting conference, and instead it's been rescheduled to occur before the M&I committee meeting on Monday, June 24th, beginning at 6:30. So at this time, there's only consent calendar items. So the M&I meeting will just start at the conclusion of the special city council meeting. Yeah, so we've just got those little consent calendar items, and then M&I can continue with their meeting. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew all of that. And now we have more to our meeting. So we've got an executive session. There's an executive session this evening to discuss pending and potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren I. This item is expected to take approximately 10 minutes, and action is anticipated to follow in open session. Please note, executive sessions are closed to the public. Do we want to take a small break, or with a 10-minute, are we good? Okay, we've got one ask for a break, so I'm going to do 5 minutes and then say we will go into executive session at 9:52 p.m. Okay, thank you. Okay, we are now back in open session at 9:12 p.m. And I would like to move to authorize the city attorney or their designee to execute and submit any and all documents necessary to participate in the 3M and DuPont class action lawsuit settlements related to PFAS contamination.
Second.
Okay. Is there any council discussion? Okay, seeing none, the motion before council is to authorize the city attorney or their designee to execute and submit any and all documents necessary to participate in the 3M and DuPont class action lawsuit settlements related to PFAS contamination. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 9:13 p.m.